In a serious race against a comedian, Democrat Al Franken. At issue, Coleman's support for President Bush's Iraq war policies. Senator Coleman is joining us now from Minneapolis. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Wolf.
Listen to what Al Franken told our Larry King the other night about you. Listen to this.
Norm Coleman was a cheerleader for this president during this war. And whenever anyone was critical of the war, Coleman would lash out at them.
How worried are you about that line coming from Al Franken?
Well, I have to say, Wolf, lashing out is not my style. It is Al Franken's style, and that's something that he's going to have to deal with ultimately, and the people of Minnesota will decide whether they want lashing out style. That's not Norm Coleman. I firmly believe, Wolf, that defeat in Iraq would be a terrible thing. I oppose timelines. I think the idea of al-Qaeda sending a message that we drove the Russians out of Afghanistan, the Americans out of Iraq, would have a destabilizing impact on the 300 million Muslims in India. On the other hand, there are times where I have disagreed with this administration. I had to raise concerns about the surge. I do what I think is right. I think Minnesotans respect me for that. I take Al Franken's candidacy very seriously. To me, it's not a joke. I mean, he's raised $1.3 million. He's rich enough that he doesn't have to work. He can campaign full-time for the next 20 months. So that's not a joke, and hopefully we will have a serious discussion at some point in time. But I'm just going to go do my job, do it as best I can, and hopefully for the people of Minnesota that will be good enough.
Back in 2004, you said the war was winnable. You still believe it's winnable?
Yeah, I definitely, you know, what's winnable today? I think Iraq is a mess. There's no question about that. On the other hand, Wolf, I think there are serious consequences. One, I would strongly object to Democrat plan for immediately pull out. I strongly object to timetables for defeat. On the other hand, we're not going to have massive American presence in Baghdad for a long period of time. Either the surge is going to be successful, the Iraqis then will have greater stability, do the reconciliation, which we all cry out for. It's about reconciliation, and in the end, we'll fight the battle against the al-Qaeda.
Why do you say, Senator, that the U.S. is not going to have the surge, the increase in troops for a long time? I've spoken to some of the top commanders over there, and they say it's going to be at least 6 to 9 months before they have a sense whether or not it's working.
Well, in the end, Wolf, when I say a long time, I think before the end of 2008, you're going to see significant change one way or the other. It may be that if the surge has been successful and there has been reconciliation, then we'll all breathe a sigh of relief, but Americans will still be in Iraq. They may be, by the way, be redeployed into some areas near the Iranian border so the Iranians don't come in. But the bottom line, we've got 2 or 3 paths in Iraq. One, the surge is successful, and again, there's reconciliation. If it's not successful, we got ourselves out of the crosshairs of a civil war, probably redeployed somewhere else. But the prospect that somehow we're going to be safer, the world will be better if we simply walk out of Iraq, that's something I disagree with. If the people of Minnesota hold me accountable in a negative way for that, I'll live with that. The bottom line is that stability in Iraq is in all our interest. On the other hand, there is not a blank check here. The Iraqis have to move quicker. They've got to move more effectively to deal with reconciliation.
All right. Senator, I know the issue of embryonic stem cell research is very, very important to you. You've introduced legislation to try to thread the needle, if you will, separating the president's stance from so many others, including a lot of Republicans in the Senate. Listen to what the president said this morning.
In our day, there is a temptation to manipulate life in ways that do not respect the humanity of the person. We must continue to work for a culture of life where the strong protect the weak, and where we recognize in every human life the image of our Creator.
17 Republicans voted to expand federal funding for embryonic stem cell research, including Orrin Hatch. You were not one of them. Why are you opposed to what so many of them are suggesting, including almost all of the Democrats? This potentially could find cures for Parkinson's, for all sorts of diseases.
Wolf, I support that. I also got, right after that vote, we got 70 votes for my bill, for the Coleman-Isaacson bill, which will allow us to pursue the hope of embryonic stem cell science without fighting the culture war, without getting involved in the destruction of human life to pursue the science. Wolf, the bottom line...
Well, unfortunately, our satellite has just gone down. I want to apologize to Senator Coleman. We'll try to get him back. Senator Coleman's position is trying to bridge that gap between what the president supports, what so many others in the Congress are supporting. President threatening to veto that legislation if it does come to his desk. Once again, we'll have Senator Coleman back. back here in the Situation Room. Coming up, the controversial B-22 Osprey is about to